So on this table here, you can see an IWC Mojave watch, and there is 2 other watches which I will be unboxing today, which is really cool. But in this episode, I'm going to just take you through some of my thoughts and processes of actually getting to this stage in a watch shoot. In this episode, I'm using a new little device, which is a camera, which can follow me. It just follows my face. In the interest of getting an episode in before I go to Dubai, I fly tonight at 10 p.m. So there's not much time, and I need to shoot a couple of watches before I go in amongst a pile of other things. But before we get to that, let's get to this. We have a logo, which some of you may be familiar with. This is a Fratello logo. So Fratello is another watch media company who are based actually in Amsterdam, which is cool. And in here is a very special watch, and I believe it's a limited edition, a watch that they did. So let's have a look together. I think I'm going to throw a few little items and gadgets in here in my shot, which makes my top-down shot look a little bit more interesting. This is a white balance checker. So I've already done that little process now. So now I'm going to go into opening this little watch base. Okay, so. Wow. Holy smokes. Let's have a look here. This looks like an Oris Diver 65. On the logo, it is an Oris Star. So this is, but super, super similar. So I'm gonna this is really, really nice. This has got some very vintage vibes. Let's have a look under this sticker. Ah, there you go. That's a Fratello logo. Let's chuck it on the wrist. And wow, this is a very, very vintage inspired piece. Now, I believe that this Oris Star used to come in, I think, a 36 mil. The vintage version of it was a 36 millimeter version. And this is the updated version. And by the looks of it, shall we get out the calipers? Now, some of you may or may not have seen something like this before. This is a caliper tool. So let's measure this watch's diameter. Here we go. We're going to go from edge to edge. Yeah, it's right, 39.5 to 40 mil, whatever. So it's a pretty good size. It's in that kind of Goldilocks zone for most people. And I think that with this particular watch, this is going to fit most people's wrists. I like it. Lug to lug. People really enjoy the lug to lug measurement because it shows them, or it can give them an indicator of how big the watch is going to be on your wrist itself. And that is based on when you measure from this point to this point, this is going to, if you project that onto your wrist, we're going to see whether the lugs stick out or whether they are within your wrist. Now, as you can see on my wrist, this lug to lug is well within my wrist. Now, I have a 7.5 inch wrist. So this lug to lug, if I measure this just really roughly, really quick, it is like about a 49 millimeter lug to lug. Now, the reason why this is a really good measurement to kind of understand is when you're kind of looking at watches online and on the internet and things like that, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes whether a watch is going to fit on your wrist. And sometimes a watch, it may actually have a very large diameter on the actual watch itself, but its lugs might be really, really small. So they might not stick out very far. So you might look at that and assume, nah, this is going to be way too big for my wrist. But in actual fact, because of the way the lugs work and how that strap might drop down, it might not actually be too big for your wrist. It feels, this bezel action feels really, really good. But you know what? The one thing which is really striking me immediately about this is just that thinness. There you go, 12.5. 12.5 on the wrist. So that's really going to fit under your cuff, under your sleeve of a suit. But yet it's a nice little sporty thing. It's 100 meters water resistant, so it's, you know, probably a little not quite enough to be sort of categorized a diver. But also what I noticed, which is kind of really cool, is this trapezoidal date window. That to me just gives it this little kind of nod, little vintage nod to, I don't know, the 60s or something like that. Just that little bit of Batman wackiness or something like that. You know what I'm really curious to know from you guys is what is it that you would actually like me to talk about? What is it? Have you got any specific questions in relation to photography or watch videography or anything that you're just curious? Maybe it's just something interesting that you've always kind of wondered and you'd like to ask. So by all means, hit me up in the comments. I am very active in responding to comments which are directly related to videos that I'm in. You know what's really funny is that watches always get sent to me in sometimes small boxes, but sometimes really big boxes. And I really don't know why sometimes they get packed in such big things, but let's have a look at this. So it's so big that I've got to zoom this camera out. Here we go. Let's go. Boom. So, what could it be? What could it be? Okay, there is something down here. You just got to dig. You got to dig. You got to dive in. Okay, cool. Look at this. Shall we? We shall. Let's open this up and find out what we got. Okay, so boom and boom and okay, cool. Well, I think most people who know anything about watches only need to see this part to know what the brand is. I think if I was to say what brand does color really well, I would think that IWC are right up there with the heavy hitters, man. They do color super well. And I think that when they first started doing their ceramic watches with the Pantone, I think as a photographer, what I really dig about these is that they just nail all of their color selections of all of the different materials. So if you look at this particular sand colored, I think this is the Mojave. Now this is the Mojave Top Gun Chrono. But what's interesting about this is when they first came out with these Mojave watches, I think they were 44 mil, and now this has gone down to a 41. I believe it's a 41. I know the model is called a 41. Whether or not that is the dimensions, let's see. But what I dig about the way they've done all these colors is that they have color matched perfectly everything. So if you look at this tone of sand, and then you look at this tone of the sand and the rubber, it is just as identical as you're going to get with two differing types of material against one another. And then even on this strap, you have this fabric kind of lining, and even that is just color matched beautifully. So I would say that a watch like this is perfectly suited for people who are just, they love the technicality and the reliability of such a magnificent watch like this. It's not a cheap watch, but it's all about color here. So some might look at something like this and think that's a little bit too hard to read. Others are going to gravitate directly to something like this because of its colorway and just go, that is exactly what I want. Look at how beautiful these colorways are. Now, I believe that there is two different things about these watches. This watch here is made of ceramic. This watch here is made of IWC's ceratanium. Now, ceratanium is kind of like, it has the scratch resistance of something like ceramic, but it is it's less prone to shattering. Okay, so here's the one thing to think about when you're buying a ceramic watch. You could virtually not scratch this even if you tried. So it is, and also what's amazing about this ceramic is that the color does not fade over time. So it's color fast. So it doesn't matter what the sun is doing, it's gonna look this color for years and years and years to come. So this is pretty special when it comes to how long your watch is gonna last in its kind of beautiful color state And especially if you're buying a watch which is all about color, that's pretty bloody important. But the one thing you got to be really careful with is that if you drop this, it is ceramic and it could just shatter. I mean, imagine picking up a dinner plate, a ceramic dinner plate, dropping it even just a meter, it's going to just crack apart. So this watch maybe does have the potential to shatter. Now, the reason why I bring this up is that IWC then have this material which is called ceratanium. So ceratanium is kind of like a mixture of alloys, I believe maybe some sort of titanium sort of thing. And the way they treat this, and when they, I guess, finish it off, is that it has the durability and strength of titanium. So if you dropped this piece, it's not going to shatter. But apparently the scratch resistance of this ceratanium is kind of almost right up there with ceramic as well. So you kind of got the best of both worlds, which is really cool. But what I want to explore now is making a little bit of a set for one of these watches, which I'm sure maybe could be interesting because I rarely do this. I've done this one time before. There was a watch, it was a Bulova Lunar Pilot. And the Lunar Pilot is it's a very affordable, let's say, equivalent to a moon watch. So I was thinking, I want to pick up on this lunar theme. I want to pick up on this moon theme. Most of us know that on the surface of the moon, there is a lot of lunar dust. So I decided to use some sand as a perfect, setting to be able to put this watch. And I used a lot of my motion control equipment, which in future episodes, I'm going to show you how some of these toys and tricks work. It's pretty crazy. Sand and watches are not very good bedfellows. So we want to keep the watches very safe and away from the sand until we've set up our set. And I'm going to take you with me. This is my little lair, right? I'm going to flip it around. Okay, so here is some few bits and pieces, some camera equipment, some sewing machines in case I want to sew. And if you want to play Hungry Hungry Hippos, that's one of my kids' favorite games. So, I don't know. Have you done the hippo? We're not going to do the hippo. Some sand. This might be handy, and I like the look of these. This is a nice, slick, sophisticated approach on color. So let's keep our set sophisticated, shall we? Okay. Now, what I know about this sand is that it is very messy indeed. So when you pour it out, you've got to pour it slowly or else it just powders up and the sand can sort of permeate through the air. So as you can see, color-wise, I think it's going to be a pretty good match. So let's see. I feel like this feels like I don't know, some kid's show or something like that. I'm like, okay, everybody, let's make a sand castle. Are you good at making sand castles? I'm good at making sand castles. Let's make some sand castles together. No, okay. So I can already see that this little sand dust is kind of going a little bit bizarre, going a bit bananas, but here we go. We don't need a lot of sand, just enough. Then I'm going to use this. Let's just tease this sand out a little bit because it's quite a thick layer, so that's kind of cool. It's a bit like painting. So this is kind of cool, kind of interesting. More interesting than just a desk or a color or something like that. And we can kind of do little swirls and things like that just to kind of give us some accents and things like that. I spied this over there a second ago, which is this. I was actually sort of thinking, can we use this with that? But I think it's just too much. I think we've already got, sometimes you can go too far with props. Here's an old leather belt. We've also got these little items here, which could be cool. I'm kind of getting a vibe of like a message in a bottle. And I also like these two little objects, which are the right tone. Look at that. This is like a wooden handled old school pocket knife. And this is a Time+Tide tool. It's a really, really nice tool. And you'll see me use this in loads of my shoots. And the reason why I love it is because it is tiny. It's as tiny as a watch face. So this object, when I'm doing macro shots, it plays super well in those macro shots. Now, for the sake of keeping the watch off the sand, I don't want to put this watch on the sand. But how are we going to do that? What are we going to prop it up on? I've got the perfect solution. Lego. Look at this. This Lego piece, I think, is going to be the answer. If it focuses. All right, so look at this. We get this watch and we see if this, look at that. You're not even going to be able to see it. So, perfect. So, just in case IWC is watching this episode of In the Metal, you can see that I'm looking after your watch. And I'm going to stick this watch. Look at that. So let's remember that the only part of the watch which is sitting in the sand is this and this, which I'm going to be cleaning momentarily. So then I want to sort of start to maybe, I don't know, let's play with some of these little bits and pieces here. Here and here. A little bit of randomness. Kind of like the idea of just this belt being a little bit sort of haphazardly thrown on the table, along with this this watch here. So we're starting to get there, just in the top corner, something like that. It is a good start, but I'm not exactly that happy with it just yet. But for the sake of doing this episode, and because I've got to really move into the actual real shooting of this, and I don't have time to be shooting the episode at the same time, I wanted to just give you a little bit of an insight on how I think and how I treat this, this little universe here. But now, the next part of this, as far as before I shoot this watch, is to really refine this lighting and really refine this sort of prop placement and things like that. But if you keep tuned into the Time+Tide channel, if you have not yet subscribed, a lot of you have not subscribed, and it's the best way that you can support us in making content like this. This is the fun content that we love to make, but we need to make sure that there's definitely an audience out there that actually wants to see it. Do you love watches? I love watches. Let's love watches together. Like and subscribe.